Hello, everyone. I'm Congressman Bill Foster. I'm a scientist, a businessman, and I'm proud to represent the 11th Congressional District of Illinois in the U.S. House of Representatives. Thank you all for joining me and Congressman Casten and the presidents and leaders of our local colleges and universities as we discuss how the American Rescue Plan funding for colleges and universities has made a difference in our districts and our region. And I want to give a special thanks to the educators that have joined us for the press conference today. Your strength, creativity, and perseverance over the past 17 months of the pandemic have made an immeasurable difference in the lives of the students and communities that you serve. Your work does not go unnoticed. As we know, President Biden signed the American Rescue Plan, a comprehensive package to defeat COVID-19 and get help to struggling families and small businesses, into law last March. The American Rescue Plan included nearly $36 billion for roughly 3,500 public and private nonprofit colleges and universities nationwide. In Congressman Casten's and my districts alone, $146 million of this funding was allocated for our local colleges and universities. Our districts are home to outstanding educational institutions that attract and educate students from Illinois and all over the world. It would have been unacceptable to let these institutions and their students buckle under the serious financial strain of the COVID-19 pandemic. And by sending direct cash assistance, half of which was directed to be distributed in the form of emergency cash assistance grants to students facing hunger, homelessness, and other hardship, the American Rescue Plan funding was intended to provide support to students trying to finish school and complete their education. And that's one of the reasons I was so proud to vote for this bill. Our students are our future, and our colleges and universities are essential to preparing students for building back a better economy and a stronger world after COVID. I'm looking forward to hearing directly from the presidents of our local colleges and universities about how they were able to use this funding. Again, thank you all for joining us today, and I'm now going to turn it over to my colleague in Congress, Representative Casten.
Thank you so much, Congressman Foster. Thank you to all of our educators who are here, and thank you for getting through a really, really difficult year. When COVID first hit, Congressman Foster and I both spent a lot of time talking to university presidents, and it was so clear that we had two huge crises in addition to everything from COVID we had to grapple with. The first was that, for a lot of our colleges and universities, the revenue model depends on them having students present, and of course that wasn't possible given public health concerns. But the second was that the students themselves, their lives were massively disrupted. 25% of high school graduates last year decided to delay their college plans, more often than not because economically they just couldn't afford. They needed to be caregivers. Their parents weren't in support. They had housing insecurity, food insecurity. And so we put this together with a really keen awareness that in 2008, when the financial crisis came, we set back a whole generation. Here we are over a decade later, millennials still have the lowest rate of home ownership. It was really important to us. We knew that this was going to be an economically painful year in 2020, but let's make sure that this is a blip that recovers and doesn't set back an entire generation. And so to that end, we put this in place. We provided resources. The resources are, as Congressman Foster said, the majority of those resources are to go to students. They're targeted to students that have exceptional need Pell Grants, need food assistance, have housing insecurity. The money can also be used to provide resources that the campus needs now that they didn't need before. So mental health resources, needs around COVID specifically so that schools can set up testing facilities, more PPE, vaccine facilities, but basically the whole idea to get back to normal as quick as we possibly can. And really, really proud that we came together, that Congress came together, that we passed this bill through and now seeing it distributed out to our communities, because we have a tremendous resource in our educational institutions. We have tremendous potential in the students that are at those institutions, but for us to use that resource and realize the potential, we need to get everybody back to normal. So I look forward to hearing your questions. For the press and media that's on, please put your questions in the chat and we will get to them as we wrap up. But I now want to turn over to the true heroes and the true experts here. And we're going to start with Dr. Brian Caputo. the president of the College of DuPage. Dr. Caputo, the floor is yours.
Hello, Congressman.
Hey, I think we can hear you now, Dr. Caputo. You're live. I can't see you, but we can hear you.
Okay, very good then. We'll proceed. I'd like to say first, thank you to Congressman Casten and Congressman Foster. We are so grateful for your support and the support of our local legislators as we continue to navigate through the global pandemic. Access to high quality education at an affordable price is critical to student success, especially in today's challenging times. As the state's largest community college, COD is gratified to see that Congressman Casten and Congressman Foster are putting significant dollars behind our work in addressing the needs of more than 21,000 students. The American Rescue Plan distribution for College of DuPage totals approximately $36.5 million, which we will put to good use in our efforts to ensure student success. College of DuPage plans to use approximately $18.5 million to assist students with tuition. In addition, the institutional portion will cover COVID-related expenses, including those we will incur to promote the health and safety of our students, faculty, and staff. On behalf of our entire college community, again, I say thank you for your support. With me here today are two of our most distinguished student leaders, Naila Sabahat, and student trustee on the student trustee on COD's Board of Trustees, and Carla Jimenez, the Vice President of our Student Leadership Council. Naila and Carla would like to say a few words. Not sure whether we've got some problem with connectivity here.
Yeah, Carla is there. Carla, if you want to just jump the line and start speaking, it'd be great.
Sure, of course. So, good morning, everybody. And first of all, thank you for this great opportunity granted to speak on behalf of the students. My name is Carla Jimenez. I am the Vice President of the SLC. And with me is Naila Sabahat, once mentioned, the Student Trustee of COG. We're here to bring light to certain circumstances that students are experiencing in a day-to-day life. Just as yesterday, a question was asked to a large group of students in a meeting of which we were part of. And the question was, have you ever skipped a meal because you didn't have food at home? And many responded yes. Then I realized that a lot of my peers were not able to afford a proper meal in the past or even today. I believe my partner Naila is not able to connect, or
sorry, I got it now.
Perfect.
So
Continue, Naila.
this is only one of many examples in which funding can positively affect the life of students. In the same meeting, another story was brought up. A peer had to find a second job as a way of income because her work circumstances drastically changed due to COVID-19. She told me the next semester is not going to wait for me to have money to pay for my tuition. That made me realize that many students have to choose between working or studying because of their economic standing. Sadly, these are not only the stories where students have to choose between their education or something else. Many students are still in need of aid. We are grateful as students and as an institution for this additional funding. It will play a huge role in the future for students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carla and Naila and Dr. Caputo. And I apologize to everybody. I'm grateful for your patience as we work through some of these Zoom era transitions. We're now going to turn over to Jim Gates, the Wheaton College Chairman of the Board. And I see, Jim, you're popping up. Hopefully you're able to unmute, and look forward to your comments.
Hello, this is Jim. And on behalf of the Board of Trustees of Wheaton College and all of our students, all of our faculty, our staff. We do want to say we are very, very grateful for all 3 rounds of HERF. We have used 2 already, and we are now processing our 3rd grant. And we know the impact. So we just wanted to say thank you to Representative Casten, Representative Foster, and your entire colleague set who saw this unprecedented need for students in higher ed. At Wheaton College, we have received now a total of $11.1 million in grants. And since we are smaller relative to COD, we appreciate the fact that our amount is less. Half of that goes directly to students. The students at Wheaton College come from around the world. We're an international school and a national school. So you just think about the triple whammy of the students. They had huge family income impacts. They had huge travel impacts. Some unable to get home for months and months and months because of international restrictions. So the impact was big on their family, big on them personally. And of course, from a financial standpoint, unprecedented. Unable to, many of them, work to support their tuition, room and board. They were unable to work. So just a monster impact on our students. And this relief effort went a long way towards continuing their education, just as you said, Representative Casten. So they were able to continue. Virtually all of our students were able to continue, not every, but almost all. Also, though, a huge impact on the institution from the standpoint that everyone was devastated. Our professors, all of us. How do we process this? So all 3 rounds were a huge encouragement and offset some of the revenue and some of the expense impacts. Revenue, of course, room and board, a modest amount of tuition, and other impacts. They were huge. And expenses, we had expenses that we had never anticipated, including medical expenses, technology expenses, et cetera. So this really was a true rescue package for Wheaton College. And we are very, very grateful. Look forward to collaborating into the future of education in Illinois and in America. So thank you. Now I need to hand it off to Dr. Troy Hammond, President of North Central and leader of the Cardinals. Dr. Hammond.
Dr. Hammond actually was unable to make it today. Next is Arvid Johnson.
I'm happy to join you and I appreciate the introduction. On behalf of the University of St. Francis, I'd like to thank Congressman Foster and Casten for sharing such wonderful news as we begin the summer semester at what we proudly refer to as the Joliet Regions University. As we look around, we continue to see the impact that the COVID-19 pandemic has had on our local communities and beyond. The hardships this pandemic has created are wide-reaching, so relief initiatives such as the American Rescue Plan play a pivotal role in our collective recovery and hopefully a return to whatever will pass for normalcy as we go forward. At the University of St. Francis, we anticipate the funding provided through the American Rescue Plan to be used in 2 primary ways. 1/2 of the funds will be used to provide our students with important resources that they may need for continued success in their respective collegiate journeys. The other half of the funds will be made directly available to all students, including our international and DACA students who are in need of financial assistance due to the ongoing and resonating impact of the continuing COVID-19 pandemic and the financial hardships that is created on so many levels for our students and their families. We received our funding yesterday, and we're currently finalizing all the processes through which students will be able to request and receive the assistance provided by these funds, but they are greatly appreciated. We understand that the challenges created by the COVID-19 pandemic are not over, which is why the University of St. Francis continues in its collective efforts to provide a safe and healthy campus environment for the members of the USF community. We are, and we will continue to be, Saints United. With that, I'd like to now introduce the next participant on our call, who is the president of our neighbor to the north, Dr. David Livingston of Lewis University in Romeoville, Illinois, and my alma mater. Dave.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. It is a pleasure to be with all of you today. I also want to thank Representative Foster and Representative Casten for their courageous vote in assuring that this funding was available, really all three packages, as many people have mentioned. It impacted in the past two bills, more than 1,000 of our students. We have about 7,000 students on campus, and we expect that the American Rescue Plan will impact about 1,400 of our students, our neediest students on campus with the greatest need. One of the things that it also has done, as other people have mentioned, is allowed us to invest in other areas that really helped us to respond to the COVID pandemic. And I just want to give one example. Dr. Nancy Ryland, who's a nursing faculty for us, but a public health professional, was able to take time away from her classes in order to head up our COVID response. And she worked with Will County. She was able to also coordinate many of our student nurses to give vaccines at the Will County free clinics. And this allowed us to get out into the community. But I can say that many of those students who gave vaccines to other members of the community would not have been able to still be in school had it not been for the ARP funds and the other HERF funds. And we expect to continue to do that. It impacts the broader community. The other thing we were able to do with these funds just about a month ago was to set up a clinic with Will County for developmentally disabled adults on our campus. And that ability to serve a unique population and help the broader community, as well as, of course, helping our students to continue to become nurses, police officers, pilots, accountants, all of these things that make our future possible. So thank you to Representative Foster, Representative Casten, President Biden, and our senators for the courage to vote for this bill and continue to invest in the future of higher education. It's now my privilege to introduce Dr. Judy Mitchell, the president of Joliet Junior College.
Good afternoon. First, on behalf of the students, our employees, and the community served by Joliet Junior College, we want to share our deep gratitude to Representatives Foster and Casten and our legislators across the country for supporting this critical plan. To date, we've awarded approximately $6 million to support our students. The need is staggering. Let me just share a few stories we've encountered. We have a nursing student who was struggling to pay for gasoline so she could drive to her clinical. Both of her parents were ill with COVID. Their prolonged illness created a situation where they could not afford groceries or medicine. We have a student with disabilities struggled because, again, of COVID, preventing him from working due to high-risk medical conditions. We have a student working from her car who do not have access to a home computer, so is working from her cell phone. She would park close to campus or other public buildings to get stronger Wi-Fi connection to turn in her work. And we have a homeless student who was living out of her car trying to finish classes last spring, again, without access to a computer. These experiences, as you've heard today, are unfortunately common. What I'm happy to share is that these students and so many others ultimately found support through federal funding we've received, in addition to the generosity of our donors through student emergency funds. Something else that has become abundantly clear is how hard it can be for people to ask for help. We've invested a significant amount of time to ensure that the way JJC has dispersed federal funds has allowed our students to receive help and protect their dignity. Our mental health services increased by 129% from fall 2019 to 2020. This is not just a financial crisis, it's a crisis of humanity. And we are grateful for the support of our federal partners to pull through this together. To that end, I think it's important to share that eligible students received to date 131,000 from the GEAR grant in the form of COVID relief checks and a direct deposit, 147,000 from the HSI grant in the form of COVID relief checks and direct deposit, 19,400 from the GEAR grant in the form of Aldi gift cards. 333 students participated in our laptop program. The new announcement of the ARP and its investment of the $21.6 million in Joliet Junior College will further ensure that all students are successful. This inclusion of the DACA students in this plan is welcome and impactful. 29% of our population is Latinx. In fiscal year 21, the college lost $6 million in tuition fees and auxiliary revenue services. We know the value of education and the way it's delivered is evolving. That's why we'll use the new dollars to build out every delivery method, protecting the losses the college has incurred. And we've already begun engaging the talents of our entire campus community to contribute to the creation of new student support and academic programs to thrive in the post-pandemic era. Again, I thank you all for your overwhelming support. It's greatly appreciated. And now I have the pleasure of introducing my friend and colleague, Dr. David Somm from Elgin Community College.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. Greetings from Elgin. On behalf of the Board of Trustees, faculty, staff, students of Elgin Community College, thank you, Representative Casten and Representative Foster, for all your support of our institutions and making sure that we have received funding to help our students. It has been a very difficult time, and we have received 3 rounds of funding. And whilst we are appreciative of every round that we've received, we've already spent over $5 million. We are especially appreciative of the American Rescue Plan funding because of the loosening of all the requirements so that more students than ever before can receive these fundings. During the first 2 rounds, we identified students who needed funds, but because of the restrictions, we were not able to help. We are now able to help more students. We are so grateful because several of our students did not hit the pause button during the pandemic. They continued with their education, and the support they've received will help them get to the finishing line. We've used the money in a variety of ways similar to those mentioned already. Hotspots for students, computers for students, and so forth. Just this week, we were able to identify several students who took dual credit classes and have earned, let's say, about 30 hours. And they could have chosen to go anywhere or nowhere. We have decided to use some of these funds to get them to come to ECC and finish the associate degrees and continue. On many levels, this funding has helped improve the lives of people in District 509. So thank you very much. It is my pleasure now to introduce the Dean of Community College Presidents, Dr. Christine Sobek.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's also a pleasure to be with my colleagues this morning to express our gratitude collectively. So on behalf of the Waubonsee Community College Board of Trustees, our faculty, staff, and students, we too express our deep gratitude to Representative Foster and Representative Casten on these wonderful dollars, which has helped really transform our institution and most importantly, our community and our students. So with regard to the American Rescue Plan, Waubonsee will receive approximately $14 million to assist with student allocated funds and institutional funds. We are focused as our colleagues on using the student allocated dollars to retain and graduate our current students. And a lot of interventions, much like my colleagues have expressed, are in place at Waubonsee. We are also going to be using the student allocated funds to re-energize those students who have taken a break or stopped out, if you will, during the pandemic due to many financial barriers. We are developing a strategy for the institutional funds that will provide students with the technology and resources to be successful as they continue to navigate coursework and support services. As an example, using our prior federal funding, the college awarded almost $1.8 million in technology grants, which provided more than 2,800 students the necessary means to purchase laptops, hotspots, cameras, and other necessary technology needed for their coursework. And we definitely plan to continue this type of program. In addition, we launched what we have branded the Reach Higher Scholarship, which is a one-stop opportunity for students once they enroll through a very simple, streamlined process to apply for additional funding that allows them to meet some of their other expenses that have occurred that we talked about, whether it's food insecurity, housing, transportation, and the like. We've made this very simple for students to access because we know we want to disperse the money to our students as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So again, I think to echo what my colleagues have said, this amazing federal funding and the support we've received has allowed us to provide support to so many deserving students and their families during these unprecedented times, while they want to continue to focus on their education and of course on their path to a brighter future. So again, we are so grateful and so appreciative of this opportunity to provide this support. And we look forward to, not just this support and collaboration, but many more opportunities to come. So again, on behalf of the Waubonsee Community College family and team, we express our deep gratitude for your support and encouragement through these, yes, unprecedented, I'll say the word again, through these unprecedented times. So thank you so much. And I think I turn the program back over to our representatives.
Okay, now I think we're going to have someone read the questions that we've received from the press, which will be directed either to our panelists or perhaps to Sean and me.
Good morning. So the first question we've had come in is from Ryan Burrow at WGN. These are for Congressman Foster and then for you, Congressman Casten. What are you hearing about student loan forgiveness coming from either the White House or Congress? Has there been any serious discussion about this in the House?
Well, first off, yes, there's been a lot of serious discussion and some statements of commitment from the White House that we haven't seen the details on yet. The variables that are in play on this is how much of the forgiveness will be directed toward interest payments versus principal write-downs, because you can structure it either way. Some of the most tragic circumstances are people who are, senior citizens who have just been struggling and barely paid down their principal at all. And when they're paid back in interest, many times the amount they've ever paid, or sometimes because of the structure of some of these agreements, it falls back on their parents who co-signed these, and it's actually damaging the retirement of their parents. And so that there's a lot to be done in those tragic circumstances, and so it's a tough situation. And personally, one of the toughest things is that as we all know, not all families have the wherewithal even to send their children to even to community college, because the costs are not zero and you need living expenses. And so just thinking through the sort of justice implications of having a large loan forgiveness check given to one family who tried hard and ended up with a kid in debt, but nothing to another family who wasn't even able to try. There are issues there that really have to be thought through rather deeply. And the tragedy, of course, that we've not been making college more affordable all the way along. Because that's the real solution, to have the federal taxpayer do everything we can to make it so future students can escape higher education and not be burdened by this debt. But we have to do something for those who are carrying the big debt load today. So the numbers that have been talked about are in the range of $10,000 and up of loan and or interest forgiveness, and when that appears in the terms are still under intense discussion.
I'll just add one of the most sort of intriguing, very early stage conversations that I've been hearing is Congressman Foster and I both serve on the Financial Services Committee. And so we get periodic updates from the Federal Reserve on the status of our national finances. And whenever the Federal Reserve presents their balance sheet, how many assets do we have? How many liabilities do we have? There's always this little asterisk around the fact that there's total student debt, which is public and private. But there's this asterisk around the $1.5 trillion of federal student debt, which shows up as an asset on our national balance sheet. And the asterisk always says this is, maybe not as collectible as some of the other assets on our national balance sheet. And if you were in the private sector and you said, I've got this debt that's uncollectible, then your auditor says, well, you should write that down to what's collectible. You might happily take somebody. If you said, I've got something that's worth $1 that my auditor says is only worth 20 cents and someone offered you 25 cents for it, you'd be better off. There's some interesting conversations around what is actually the collectible value of that federal debt. Because if in fact we have already effectively written that off, then you start to have some creative tools around it. I don't know where that goes, but I think it's an interesting conversation, at least on the federally backed portion of student debt.
Yeah, the other area where there's real bipartisan agreement is that the various programs that if you're willing to engage in public service, or just if you've been trained as a nurse to go and work in an underserved area for a while, and provide very preferential means of paying off your student debt under those circumstances, there is good agreement on both sides of the aisle to expand those programs, which exist and should be expanded.
Thank you. Just want to remind members of the press that they can go ahead and raise their hand if they'd like to have a question for either of the representatives or for the panel. I'm gonna go ahead and unmute Eric Shelkoff from the Kane County Chronicle so he can address his question to a member of the panel.
I was just, I guess this would be for any of the college leaders. For recent high school graduates who are planning to attend college or community college this fall, how are you prepared to deal with some of the academic shortcomings the students could be experiencing because of the pandemic? Yeah, that was my question.
This is David, Sam Elgin Community College. We have support systems in place already. We had them before pandemic and we continued during the pandemic to support the students. Our advisors work closely with the counselors from high school, and so they know what the challenges these students face. Very often, though, we think of a large number of high school students who are not ready for college, but we are finding out increasingly students who are ready by their junior year and they take dual credit or accelerate college classes on our campus. And so the number of students who are not ready for college has been diminishing for us, in part because of the support system and the cooperation we've had with our school districts. But we will reach out, we will have all the programs that we've had in the past in place. We send out a lot of information to new students, and we have a student convocation where students get a ton of information, and we have an alert system that will alert us to challenges that students are facing during the first couple of weeks. So we are ready, and thankfully, the resources from the American Rescue Plan will help us do more of these things to help the students.
I'll add to that. Similarly, actually one really bright spot of our spring enrollment was a significant increase in our dual credit enrollment. So that had been a big question going into the pandemic with just the various issues going on. Would we see a decline? But in fact, we saw an increased interest in working. I think we had about a 5 to 6% enrollment increase. So we work very, I know our community college partners do very, very close contact with our school district partners We're in the buildings, we're with them online, we're working on curriculum, we're working on smooth transitions, we're working on transitional math and English. And so we're seeing some really positive gains there. We've created flexibility in our placement processes, which allow for some of these things. So I'm feeling very confident about that. And we too have support services in place already. And I think we're going to team up very well with our school districts. And I don't think we're going to miss a beat in terms of these students being able to transition into our college programs and services and be very successful.
Thank you both. Now we have a question from Raphael at the Elgin Courier News.
Yeah, it's Raphael with the Courier and the Naperville Sun. Yeah, so how will students apply or have applied for this assistance? And does it vary by college or university? Or are there rules with it? And is there a limit how much a student could receive?
I'll jump in on this one. Thank you for your question. Some of the rules relating to this third wave of stimulus money are still being worked out. And consequently, we're sort of holding back on exactly what the parameters will be, but we expect they'll be similar to some of the prior, the two prior structures, and that is some sort of need-based formula. Pell Grant eligibility can be one of those barometers that's used. In one of our prior waves of stimulus, we also had a separate sort of tier for those that had even more acute need than simply being under-resourced related to Pell. But we're going to be watching what the regulations are for this third wave before we really be very specific about how that our eligibility is going to be determined.
And let me add to that. We are working on numerous ways to make sure that students know that there are these funds available for them, or the media outlet. And so I don't think there will be any student who can escape our information overflow to them. And be it direct emails to them, phone calls to those that we believe qualify, things on our Facebook and our Twitter and everything, students will know. And part of the requirement is for them to sign off that, hey, the need is there and so forth. So we will reach the students that need it. We know usually those who need it based on their background. And we have students who were with us last year. And so we can build upon the need structure from that time. And the incoming students, as I said earlier, we are ready to work with them to make sure that they can be in school this summer and fall and beyond.
This is Dr. Mitchell. I'd like to echo what my colleagues have shared. We have extensive social media and outreach to our students, not only on the website and direct communications, but through our advisors and counselors. When we received the initial CARES funding, we started with an application process and we began that, and the dollar amount, the allocations were slightly lower. Then we heard and we listened to our students that need was so much more, and we expanded that award, exceeding $1,000 in many cases, because again, we listened to our students about their needs for mental health, for food insecurities, for housing. We knew we had to do more and we had to invest in our students in order for them to succeed. So throughout that process, and I had mentioned earlier, we've awarded approximately $6 million. And we look forward to the American Rescue Plan so we can expand that to include the Latinx, our DACA students who are in such great need, just as much as all of our students. And so we will continue to advocate and we will continue to identify new ways to provide opportunities for funding, supporting their fees, waiving fees throughout each semester. But again, so appreciative. And we continue to, again, partner with our colleagues. What is everyone doing? Again, it's all about student success and what we can do to ensure that not only they return, that they succeed and that they graduate with success.
Perhaps just to embellish on a point on what Dr. Mitchell mentioned is that flexibility in the use of these funds or making sure the rules are set up in such a way that we can use them where we have the greatest local need is very helpful. And so far that has been there, and we fully expect and hope that it will be with this third wave of stimulus money.
One other thing I'll add is, Illinois is fortunate because our community colleges and of course our universities, but I'm more familiar with our community college partnerships. We have these statewide groups and we have been meeting constantly throughout the pandemic. So for example, our Council of Presidents meets, and this is always a topic. What are schools doing to get the money out as soon as possible? What are creative ways? How can we learn from each other and partner? Our Chief Financial Officers group has been meeting constantly to look at the rules and regulations. We have a Chief Student Affairs Officers group, a Chief Academic Officers group. So I want you to know that we do collaborate a lot with regard to making sure that Illinois and our region is working together to also to disperse these funds. And there's a great spirit of sharing, of resource allocation sharing and creative ideas. So I think that's just important to mention as well, because it does take all of us working together sometimes to understand the federal regulations and to make sure that we're all following what the intent, what your intent was, what the federal government's intent is as we look to disperse these funds.
Thank you. I don't see any additional questions from members of the press, so I'd like to turn it over to Congressman Casten for his final remarks.
Well, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you all for what you've done. We didn't say it explicitly, but I think it's worth pointing out here that within the diversity of educational institutions we have in the 6th district and the 11th district, we have 2-year colleges and 4-year colleges, residential colleges and universities, colleges with more of a commuter profile, very different sets of student needs, very different sets of student economics, very different economic models for the colleges themselves, the way that your revenue scales, the way your cost scales. I'm not going to claim that what we did is perfect by any stretch, but we certainly tried to capture all of that. And I am so grateful for all that you have done to make this work, to make sure that the students are looked after, to make sure that your institutions continue to thrive and help grow our communities. And I just leave all of you, as we get, what feels like the tail end of this COVID moment, to keep Teddy Roosevelt's advice in hand when he said that the fundamental rule in our national life, the rule which underlies all others, is that on the whole and in the long run, we go up or down together. So thanks for rowing in the same direction. And we'll leave it to Congressman Foster to close us out.
Well, thank you, and thank you all for everything you've done. I guess just to end things on a high note, I'd like to mention 2 items in the upcoming infrastructure bill, which is under intense discussion, that may be very relevant to this discussion. The first is there are bipartisan agreements in principle to double our country's investments in scientific research and education, including particularly strengthening the STEM workforce at all levels. And that, the educational institutions will obviously be natural partners in that effort. And you should keep your eyes open for a substantial increase in federal assistance, because you're already so valuable in developing and maintaining our STEM workforce. The other important element of the infrastructure bill, assuming we can find a way to get it passed, is the universal broadband access, which again has bipartisan agreement. That money will be used not only for building out the internet in underserved areas, but also economic assistance to individual people for things like broadband contracts and for devices. And again, education institutions will be natural partners in making that a reality. So I hope that we'll be able to do you and your students, some more good in that area in the upcoming months if we find a way to solve the puzzle of the Senate here. And I just want to thank you all, and stay safe, and have a great upcoming school year.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.